All right, so I went ahead and I sort of finished blocking in all the visible walls and stuff back here. Let me just turn off these guys here. And so you can see sort of the structure I am left with now. For like the walls that you don't really get to see, I just ended up using like this simple sort of flat one with like just like the little bit of like surface detail on it. We can like detail it up more with like the edge detection stuff that we have built into our shader there. But I just went ahead and did it with this simpler guy. So it has a little bit of that information, but it's not so high poly detailed that it's just going to inflate our render times to a ridiculous amount. A lot of it was just about like trying to figure out a little bit more of the shape that I wanted to use. I did adjust the shape a little bit, as you guys seen a little bit ago. Let me just turn on everything now. Now we're able to see a little bit into this sort of hallway here. And then just get like a little bit of hint of details of like vents and stuff. And like where there's holes, we can like have tubes and stuff coming out of. Something maybe like running along, this kind of stuff. But for the most part, it was just starting to replace the blocking of our walls with a little bit more detail. Not necessarily all like the high poly details, like getting like little Gerts and Ernies or like greebles, as they're like sometimes called. I'm not worried about that right now. I just want to start replacing all the walls and stuff with just starting to get a little bit more of that detail in there. Some of it I did adjust though, and I'll kind of show you guys what I did with that. So this guy here was kind of sticking out something like that with its actual kitbash elements. But I liked where like the vent was placed. So what I did was just select this guy, go into points mode, sort of selected everything that was kind of sticking out. I shrunk it down and then just tucked it back in there. So I had like the nice flush wall with all the other elements. And then it had some pieces that were sticking out like these guys. So I just went into face mode and then did the marquee select as well. And then just selected everything that I didn't want and just deleted those guys. So what I ended up with was something like this. So now we have a nice wall blocked out here. And so next we can start carrying on with other elements of our scene. Now that we've added just like a little bit of detail for like our back walls and stuff, let's take a bit of a sidestep and establish some of our scene scale. And that'll allow us to like establish stuff for like our doors and our like platforms and walkways and stuff. And then once we start adding the small details, we can kind of use those in relations to like how they would feel in real life, so that it kind of helps to ground this science fiction scene in a little bit of reality. Whereas if everything's just kind of like arbitrarily scaled and like doesn't really have like a sense of detail level, it can feel awkward and unbalanced in the end. So I brought in just like a little scale dummy here. Just like a little sci-fi guy that I've found from like JAMA or Big Medium Smalls mech kit. They have like a bunch of like characters in there, so I just brought in one of those guys as like a good frame here. And And by default, they're pretty small, so I just kind of want to, where I feel like it would make sense for them to be a certain size. So I kind of like something around here. Kind of feels good for the walkways and stuff, and then once I have like the computer modules and stuff, it should feel pretty good to be about that size. And give the walkway enough space for it to have like the railings and like enough space for like 2 people to like walk past each other kind of thing. If you don't really have many people like this, there is this figure in here in your basic objects. And you can kind of do the same thing with this guy here. It's a little bit more crude, but you still get like a decent sense of the scale for your scene because its proportions are generally based on like how a human would be. So you can see sort of like how it just kind of feels a little bit more the same. You can even use just like a basic cube if you wanted to. Almost like a measuring stick kind of thing. But it's a little bit harder to see because it doesn't have like any sort of like, I guess like details on it. It's just so you don't have like a door that's huge here and then down here you have like a little tiny door. That just wouldn't make sense. So for me, I'm just going to use like this little guy. I'm just going to place a few of them around, like have one up here and then duplicate it and have one down here just so I can have a sense of scale based on like the depth in our scene. It's just nice to have a few of them placed around, that way I'm not dragging my scale dummy around my scene. And so you can see like a little bit more of how these details feel to the person there. So I'm going to bring in my little door piece I was showing before. I just brought it into my scene here. I'm going to use this in my little sort of like office workroom thing there, and then sort of build out the details of this building and like the walkway that'll eventually spread to all the walkways. I'm just going to leave this guy soloed out by itself because this is a little bit more of a heavier, detailed piece. And so I don't want to have like a duplicate in my kitbash pieces. I just want to keep it on its own. So let's bring this guy over here. And another trick to bringing objects into an area quickly is we can click this enable snap or shortcut Shift S. And then we can just click and drag and it'll snap it to vertices in your scene. And then you just click Shift S to turn off that. And now we have our door over here instead of like dragging it around your scene. I'm just going to scale it up so it feels like a guy can walk through it. Something like that feels good. So I'm just going to place it like somewhere around here for now. It's going to be intersecting our block, but that's okay for now. And for our railings, I actually have like a few kitbash pieces that might be useful to us. We can either do like pieces like these where it's just like bars. Yeah, I'm just going to use like these guys here. just to like bring in one, and then we can figure out how it feels, and then I'll populate the rest. So like we did before, S to frame it up in our little Kitbash object window, and then Alt-click drag. I was going to drag it out here, and I'm actually going to create a new symmetry, and this will be our walkways. And then let's grab our railings here, put it underneath that, and then Alt-click to put it in null. And then what I did before, the Shift S to turn on the snapping, and just snap it over there. I'm going to scale it up so it's a little bit closer to normal railing size. This walkway might not necessarily be the shape in the end. I just kind of want to bring this in here to just get the scale established. Not necessarily like the shapes and stuff, because I can always like move and adjust these after. I just kind of want to figure out where we're at scale-wise here. So generally, your railings should be something like that. It should kind of like cut off or like around the waist a little bit taller even. So like something like that should work pretty well. And if you kind of wanted to like dive into a little bit more knowledge of like where a railing should go, a lot of times in construction, there will be those requirements by law to have a railing a certain height. So you just kind of like look at those as a frame of reference. So it might be like 36 inches. So you'll know it'd be like kind of like 3 feet off the ground, which should generally be around a midpoint on your scale dummy. So we have a little bit of our scale established for our scene. Now we can kind of, in our next lesson, I'm going to start to block in a bunch of the details for this big structure here. So it's not just so super basic, and we can start to merge in some of our scale references into this guy's details.